Hello participants, I am Engineer Professor Joseph Moore, welcoming you to today's training where we'll be discussing specification writing and developing contract for services. Welcome on board. To begin with, let us start by discussing the concept of procurement. Procurement is a contractual obligation to provide a particular needed service for an organization. And the procurement is majorly divided into two. There are public procurements and private procurement. But in this course, we are majorly concerned with public procurement, which is the use of public funds by public entities to provide services that are needed. And the inputs to a procurement process are majorly divided into three. We have goods, we have works, we have services. But for this training, for this module, we are majorly concerned with services. This module is divided into 5 sessions. We'll start by discussing specifications, the definition, the scope, and the need for us to have specifications. We'll discuss types of technical specification, the structure of technical specifications, and how to prepare acceptable specifications. And finally, we'll discuss the development of contracts for services. At the end of this session, the first module will be the students will be made to define specifications. They will state the need for detailed specifications and to identify sources where you can get specifications from. By way of definition, specification entails the statement of the requirement of a procurement process. Specification tells you what the organization requires to be done at a particular instance. And it varies in nature, size, and scope, depending on the nature of what is required. The specification is supposed to be detailed enough to be tailored towards achieving that. And it is the basis upon which all other functions of a procurement process is based. It is regarded as a foundation to any contract that will be entered into between two parties. As such, it is an essential management tool that ensures that any person who is selected as a supplier provide what is specified, because it is clearly stated that this is what the organization needs. And as such, a specification must be clear, accurate, and it should define clearly what is expected from the supplier. And this is made because the output that the supplier will bring should be aimed and tailored towards the needs of the association or the organization. And so for you to have a good specification, the specification should have the supplier's interests. There are a category of persons who supplies what is needed. And you have to engage the market to know what is involved, what is available, what is the existing price. And you should make sure that the environment where this is done is competitive, such that you don't put out anybody. Everybody who is qualified should come in and be able to make his or her mark on merit. Because when everybody is involved, people are forced to innovate because they want to make a difference. And you have to also have a high standard in the delivery of requirements. It means you must be able to specify categorically what you need to be able to deliver on your mandate. and it has to be clear, simple. I should avoid unnecessary things that will make place approaches. So, in continuation, why do we use specifications? Why do we need them? Specifications are written so that every person who wants to place a tender should be able to do so. There should be open competition such that nobody is placed at a disadvantage. Whatever thing that is needed is written down so that every other person who has the capacity be able to come in. And with that, we have reasonable number of competition from persons. And the degree to which these specifications are made, they are supposed to be open and unrestricted. They are directly affected by the type and extent to which the competition is desired. So what this means is that to the level of which you want the task to be accomplished, you make sure you make your specifications clear. And it is done for the purpose of quality control, so that at the end of the day, the quality of the item that is supposed to be sent or supposed to be used is suited to what the organization wants, such that there will be no need for us to have things that are unnecessary. Now, we need to have places where we can get our specifications from. So we can get this information from end users, because they are the users of this product. So we need to use their expertise and knowledge to be able to form our specifications. Secondly, we can get this from industry, because many manufacturers put their catalog and product specifications on the internet. So it is left for us to browse the internet to be able to access this information to enrich our specifications. We can also look out for standard and test information from professional societies or organizations where available, because it is the professionals who are into the practice, they know the nuances and the advancement that have been done from time to time. We can also look at information from other governmental entities or agencies where other standard specifications are already in existence. We leverage on them and make sure that our own tool conforms with that specification. We will now talk about technical specifications in the procurement of goods and services. So the learning objectives here is that at the end of this session, students should be able to, the participants should be able to state the purpose and key characteristics of the technical specifications, and to identify the types of technical specifications and the conditions of their use. Now, technical specifications are statements of the requirement of a procurement process. They define the totality of the requirements that is needed, including the quality to be met by any object that is supposed to be procured. It means that by the time you are doing a technical specifications, you should be able to include all the necessary information in the bidding document, such that it should state clearly and describe what the procurement entity wishes to procure. What are the needs that are to be satisfied by that particular object that you want to procure? And at the end of the day, what the bidder is expected to supply or perform, such that you should state clearly what the organization needs, what is supposed to be procured, and what is expected to be supplied. Then, the key characteristics of any technical specification is that it should depend on the complexity of the objects that is supposed to be procured. For the procurement of goods and services, it must include what is the title of the object to be procured. You must state the name or the title of the procurement object and the output that the object is supposed to give out, and how is the procurement object supposed to perform you must state clearly the description and the functional requirements of the object of procurement. Those are key and essential characteristics of any technical specification that you need to put forward. Now, we go ahead. Other characteristics of technical specifications are that the factors affecting the performance of the equipment, such as the environmental and climatic factors, should be considered. And you should also look at the constraints that the new equipment might have of being compatible with other equipment that has already been installed in the company or in the facility. You should also look at the standard tests and methods used to make sure that the object procured is in conformity with existing laws and regulations. And also, you should be able to look at any parameter that you think should be taken into account to make sure that all the methods that are used are important and should be taken seriously so that they'll be able to pick up the requirements. All unnecessary requirements has to be avoided because there's no point you put something on the specification sheet that is not required. It will make the whole document you have put there redundant, and it will reduce the clarity of what is expected from the specifications. And also, we'll make sure that any specification that is put out to the public must be properly written and properly crafted. Dot all your I's and dot all your I's, you cross all your T's, such that anything that is put up for the public should be clear and should be legible to all bidders so that they will be able to use what you have put forward. Now, we're going to talk about types of technical specifications. There are majorly three types of specifications. We have the conformance specification that has to do with the design and physical specification. Secondly, we have the functional specification, and we have the performance specifications. This type of specifications are classified depending on the complexity of the object of procurement. And so we'll now take them one by one and look at them in detail. Conformance specifications are commonly used for simple products, and they have simple detailed description of the technical and the physical characteristics of the object that is being required. And for you to be able to make this type of specifications, the minimum that is required is that you must have the physical dimensions of the object, you must have the capacity parameters of the object of procurement, what are the inputs and what are the outputs. And at the end of the day, the desired composition of the material to be used must be clearly stated. This, as the name implies, is supposed to conform with the required object and the required needs of specification that is required. We now have functional specification. This type of specification is used in the procurement of specific tools or integrated systems. This is a little bit technical because the procurement entity knows the functional requirements that is expected from a particular product and object. And the procurement entity is not able to write, doesn't have the required competence to write the detailed technical specification. And so it leaves the responsibility of that specification to the bidders and the manufacturers so that they will be able to bring out what is required. Note that in this specification, like I mentioned earlier, the procurement entity knows the functional requirements, but they are unable to write the detailed specifications. And so they leave the responsibility to the manufacturer or the bidders to provide the needed information. Thirdly, we have performance specification. This type of specification is used for a wide range of products and equipment. And in this specification writing, the desired performance of the product will have to be mentioned. A product such as maybe a diesel engine or an office machine or a sewage treatment system, you have to mention the performance indices that that particular product is supposed to perform. It is important because it gives the leverage for any person that's looking at the specification to know what is required to be supplied at the required location or the required organization. It is strictly based on performance, what the product that is procured can perform. A number of national and public procurement systems have preference for the functional and performance specification types because they form the core part of the required specifications, because they enhance competition and give various bidders flexibility in providing what is needed by the procurement entity, because it has to do with the function. The specification will mention the function of the procurement object, and it also mention the performance that is required from the procurement object. And so this gives a lot of leverage to bidders such that they will be able to look at what is required and have several options that are meeting those specifications. So that is the reason why most procurement systems prefer the functional and performance specifications. Now, we'll look at the benefit of functional specifications. The benefit is that they encourage suppliers to offer alternatives. If you have mentioned the function and you have mentioned the performance of what you are requiring, then plenty other suppliers will look at what you have and then bring out their options. So it gives alternatives and it removes the issue of bias, such that maybe what you have put forward can only favor a particular person. But by the time you make it public and give various options, you have various suggestions or various products that will bring out for you to be able to look at them. And then it makes it easier because in writing out the specification, you write the function and you write the performance. So it is left for the bidders to look at it and work with it. And as such, the output you are requiring is rather very obvious, such that all the bidders, all the contractors of or whatever name kind, they will have a clear sense of direction in doing that. And so makes it important that the performance and functional specifications are a beneficial in the procurement process. We will now talk about the structure of the technical specifications. At the end of this session, you should be able to highlight the features of a well-written technical specification. You should be able to list the structure and content of the technical specifications for simple and complex procurement of services. You should be able to identify the role of the procurement functionaries in the preparation of technical specifications. Now, to prepare technical specification for goods and services, you have to work closely with the end user. Usually, the procurement entity have a procurement department that has gone to the market to look at what it is requiring. And so, it works with the users, and then it is assisted by any external specialist like consultant or expert who will guide them in preparing the technical specifications. And in doing that, we are going to explore the features of a well-prepared specification, the full range of procurement needs in the procurement of goods and services, and also the structure of the technical specifications can vary widely depending on the complexity of the object of procurement. Now, the features of a well-prepared technical specifications are that it must have a generic title, that is the title of the object to be procured. It should state the requirements that is required clearly and in a logical manner, and it should be comprehensive enough such that it will enable all potential suppliers to offer to the procurement entity the right goods at the best possible price. I should also state the criteria that will be used for acceptance or testing and for the evaluation of the goods, which is based on the physical and performance criteria that has already been set in the conformance specification. And also, it should be able to comply with any environmental or any legal or social or safety requirement that is in place from time to time. We will now look at the structure of the technical specification. The structure of the technical specification usually is composed of a description of the item in broad terms, which should be enough to describe the function of the item. It should also state the materials composition of the procured item. It should also show the physical, dimensional, and performance parameters of the procured object. The quality standards that are in reference, like the ISO or equivalent national standards, that is used for acceptance or for the inspection of the said product, and the packaging requirements that is used to package the product for preservation during shipment and to guide against destructive things on the object, such as pilfering or against wastage or breakage. The structure also must include a generic title that describes the overall function of the object of procurement. It should have a table of contents detailing all what is required or all what has been covered in the specification. It should also contain a glossary of terms, which are definitions of symbols, abbreviations, or the technical terms or acronyms that are used in a particular specification. And it should also include a description or a short executive summary of the function, the performance, or any other characteristics that the object of procurement must fulfill. The structure should also have background information explaining why the object of procurement is needed to fulfill the procurement entity's needs, plus any other outline of any background study undertaken by the procurement entity that might be of relevance to the purchase of that object. It should also have detailed requirements detailing each element that is incorporated into the scope of the project in terms of its functional and performance specifications. And also, it should have provision for quality requirements that defines the technical standard that must be met by the supplied equipment with regards to the ISO or any other equivalent national standard. This specification should also have provision for testing, commission, and acceptance, because it will form a basis upon which the procured property or object can be accepted or rejected. We will now look at preparations of specifications. At the end of this session, the objective is that we should know how to develop specifications, 2, to prepare a detailed specification, and 3, to implement the checklist of a specification. Before preparing a specification, The procurement entity should have a clear understanding of the customer, the user, and the stakeholder requirements, because the customer, user, and stakeholders are the major players in the procurement process. You should also have the correct market information, current market information. I should also know the risk that will impact the procurement process. They should also evaluate criteria to be applied and the relevant importance of each criteria. And you should also observe any government policy, international standards, and supplier charters or codes of conduct which are relevant to the procurement process. And if there is any innovation or any social procurement opportunities that are lying around, it should be utilized. There are 4 important C's for specification writing. Number 1, the specification should be clear. It should avoid ambiguity. You should use proper grammar or language and choose the accurate or precise words that are needed to convey the appropriate message. Number 2, the specification should be correct. You should present information that are accurate and as precisely using the proper terminology. Thirdly, it should be complete. Do not leave out any important or necessary information. You shouldn't use brevity at the expense of completeness, because sometimes if you want to be too brief, the information that you need to be passed will be lost. Fourthly, you have to be concise. You have to eliminate any unnecessary words at the expense of correctness. Make sure it contains the appropriate word in the appropriate manner for completeness. We will now look at the checklist to specifications. Specifications should be understandable to both the tenderer and the purchaser. It should be flexible as much as possible, because an inflexible specification defeats the competitive tender process. Specifications should be legible and concise. They should be capable of being checked, and they should be written in a way that the service to be offered can be checked as meeting the specifications that is required, so that it will not result in confusion. In developing specifications, we should involve closely all the stakeholders. This includes the specification writer, technical experts and specialists, the end users of the goods and services. And in cases where you have complex procurement, a staged approach to developing and refining the specification should be considered. This may involve developing an expression of interest, specifying the requirement at a high level. And as the process moves towards the shortlisting stage, specifications must become much more detailed. Organizations also should consider standardizing the formats and applying uniformity to specifications as far as possible. This can help to reduce the cost of the market engagement process. And where external consultants are used to facilitate the development or preparing of a specification, we must declare any conflict of interest that they have, and that they are fully aware of existing procurement policies, and that the core principles supporting these policies are maintained. Specifications will also be consistent in both content and format, and will save considerable time in preparing an approach to the market. Numbering of each requirement is recommended to allow for ease in referencing during the market engagement process and for contract management purposes. The amount of detail in the specification should reflect the complexity of the requirement and the nature of the procurement. The title of the specification must clearly indicate the title of the procurement and the invitation reference number. The specification should have a table of contents. And if the specification is a long specification, a lengthy or complex one, it should have a table of contents to specify which page each element of the specification can be found. It should also have an introduction, briefly explaining the requirements and the context of the requirement, e.g., example, the application and purpose or the function of the product that is procured. It should also have the scope. The scope is a summary of the requirements specified. It will cover the statement of what is required in terms of the implementation, installation, maintenance, upgrades, and so on, and also the anticipated demand for the period of the contract. And also, any goods or service the supplier is not required to provide, which might otherwise be considered as part of the requirements. And the specification should also have the terms of the contracts. A full description of each element summarized in the scope should be included in the statement of requirements. Background. The background information may include the following: the implication for the users of implementing the solution, the outline of the research which has been undertaken, what options have been considered, what options have been dismissed and why, how the requirement relates to other requirements, and acquisitions, whether already purchased and implemented or will be purchased or implemented in the future. There are also other documents which are considered optional. You may choose to include them or not. Such documents include other specifications, reference publications, acts of parliament, government directives, standard documents, and codes of practice. By referencing a document, they are legally incorporated into the specification. If only part of the document is relevant, they refer to that part of that is relevant only. If the procurement is covered by an international agreement, a specification should not prescribe or refer to a particular trademark or trade name, e.g. Nigerian standard, patent, copyright, design, or specific origin, producer, or supplier, unless there is no any other way or precise or intelligible way of describing the procurement requirement. The references to specific trade names should be avoided as much as possible. Service conditions and environmental factors are also put into consideration. If the physical environment in which the required products will operate or be located will affect the output, the design, or the performance of a product, the specification must explain those locations or environmental conditions. And if there are limitations imposed by the users, the specification must explain what those limitations are. Example, limited access to and within a building, or compliance with an existing code of practice. Other environmental and ergonometric factors may include operating and storage conditions, the need for interchangeability or compatibility with existing equipment or systems, availability of energy and other services, intended users of the product and their ergonomic requirements, personnel safety aspects, servicing or maintenance requirement or limitation. It should also detail any particular environmental requirements that is needed, and you should encourage suppliers to put forward environmentally friendly proposals. We also have statement of requirements, and the statement of requirements should include a description of the outputs, and it should also have the functionality and performance requirements, and the details, and detail also the performance measures and benchmark that will be monitored during the period of the contract. These measures may need further negotiation between the supplier and the end users before they become contractual commitments. These statements of requirements can vary significantly in scale and complexity, from a very small one consultancy to a complex set of requirements intended to cover major outputs of an organization. The requirements for goods and services can be similar. However, there may be specific matters for consideration in the procurement of goods and the procurement of services. So there are available guidelines and for our guidance. We have documentations for specification of goods, the statement of requirement also for specification of services. Consideration is also given to technology, systems, and management techniques. In this instance, the organization expects improvements in the use of technology, systems, and other management techniques. The supplier should be encouraged to provide innovative solutions when making their offers, noting that there may be improvement or change of technology or systems that will make better offers as the situation may demand. Data management is also important, and the management of intellectual property should be identified if applicable. Data management should also be considered and incorporated into the management strategy, and consideration should be given to existing laws and regulations existing in the area of operation. Records management. The specification should also have details of any record management requirements, which will include the creation and control, the storage, the security, the access, and the disposal of the procured product. Specification also need to ensure the full and accurate records of the activities that they must be created. Ownership and custody of records is clear. The specification must make sure that records are not disposed of without written proper authorization, and the government access to record is assured, and records are stored appropriately and kept secure. The quality requirement details appropriate quality assurances, and the processes to be undertaken by the supplier should be included in preparing the specifications. Finally, we'll now look at development of contract for services. It is expected that at the end of this session, we should be able to implement codes and standards for developing contract for services. Secondly, we should be able to complete appropriate documents for services contracts. We will now talk about specifications and standards. Technical specifications and drawings for goods and related services supplied under this contract shall conform to the technical specifications and standards mentioned in Section 7, Schedule of Requirements, and when no applicable standard is mentioned, the standard shall be equivalent or superior to the official standard whose application is appropriate to the goods control of origin. The required sections of the specification will be given as at the end of these slides as an attachment or as a link for the participant to be able to link up and look at the technical specifications and the standard in full. The supplier shall be entitled to disclaim responsibility for any design, data, drawing, specification, other documents, or any modification thereof, provided or designed by or on behalf of the purchaser by giving a notice of such disclaimer to the purchaser in record time. Whenever references are made in the contract to codes and standards in accordance with which it shall be executed, the edition or the revised version of such codes and standards shall be those specified in the schedule of requirements. During contract execution, any changes in any such codes and standards shall be applied, not after the approval by the purchaser, and shall be treated in accordance with GCC clause 33. I mentioned earlier that the link to those clauses and those technical specifications and standards will be provided at the end of these slides. This is a typical table to be filled by the purchaser. It requires completion dates, which should be realistic and consistent with the required goods and delivery dates. Here, you are going to insert the service number, maybe number 1. Here, you are going to insert the description of the related service. Under column 3 here, you are going to insert the quantity of the items to be supplied. Then, in column 4, we have the physical units. You insert the physical units of the items. Next, you insert the name or place where the services shall be performed. And finally, you include the completion date, the final completion date of the service. You have several rows here, which means that you may have different services. But all this information are supposed to be filled or completed in a tabular form like this. Here we have a table for the summary of technical specifications. The goods and related services shall comply with the following technical specification and standards. For each item, you insert the item number. Next column that has the name of goods or related service, you insert the name. And the next column, you insert the appropriate technical specification or standard, wherever they apply. For all items that you have in the specification, you include all of them here. So this is how the development of the contract for services is done. The documentation is in this kind of forms. And like I said, at the end of this slide, we'll give the link to the necessary places where you can lay hand on these forms. Thank you for your attention. See you next time. Bye.